Welcome everyone to a short talk on Nietzsche, on the art of conversation, which has much to do with idleness, with otium and Muße. Feel free to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and also feel free to support me on Patreon. Now this is in line with the Idleness with Dignity course, which I'm currently working on turning this into a book, which I'll see how I'll publish this. It might be self-published at the end. And there is something that you can notice when you begin to engage with these online communities and publishing videos yourself, is that what people really seem to be interested in is simple conversations. Some of the most successful videos out there are it's just two people or three people having a conversation, having a dialogue. And there's something that's a bit stunning about that, because you would think that we would actually have conversations most of the time. But there is something quite weird insofar as in this epoch there seems to be less and less room for the eclectic, even for someone who hasn't quite figured out yet what's going on and just tries to make sense of what's going on. We, of course, live in a very accelerated epoch, to say the obvious. So we tend to jump to conclusions and we tend to have pre-formatted opinions. Now, our epoch, one could say, is an epoch of nihilism. And of course, this is a very broad claim. We have to be clear what we mean by nihilism. But for now, we could just maybe say that nihilism is a sense of senselessness, a sense of meaninglessness, a sense of a lack of orientation, of the ground withdrawing. And if our epoch is an epoch of nihilism, a sense of profound boredom, which is entertained and which at the same time is numbed by industrialized leisure, then attempt at grabbing power only for the sake of gaining power is for some, I suppose, a means to give themselves meaning. Such an epoch, such as ours, of course, then mustn't or cannot allow for the eclectic, for someone who's eclectic or a bit confused and not yet certain about simple positions, which hence you get to pro and con, right? You're either pro or against something. Such an age cannot allow for the eclectic, because someone who is eclectic does not want to engage in such simple power games that require militaristic strategy. Someone who is eclectic is after something else, namely, I would contend, the eclectic is behind meaning and purpose and the playful entertainment of divergent, even contradictory ideas and thoughts. I'm quite taken by Benjamin Franklin's junta, by the way, who, when Benjamin Franklin lived in London, he had a sort of a secret society, a society that he formed amongst like-minded individuals. At every junta they discussed several questions, and just one of them I find very important. One of the questions is, do you know any fellow citizen who has lately done a worthy action, deserving praise or imitation? And this is an exercise, I would say, precisely in civility and in the art of conversation. To ask such a question, try and do this with your peers, with your family, with your pals, with your friends. Try and ask that question. Try and ask, do you know of any fellow citizen who has lately done a worthy action, deserving praise or imitation? How rarely do we praise someone? Because in praising others, rather than by falling into the doomy feedback loop of endless critique and self-pity, we open up a different space, I would say. As Nietzsche writes in The Gay Science, there is a severe lack of such experiences in the modern world, and it has to do, for him, with the disappearance of dignified idleness. Nietzsche writes, "Today there is a, quote, most odd mindlessness. Already one is ashamed of keeping still. Long reflection almost gives people a bad conscience." And he continues, quote, "One no longer has time and energy for ceremony, for civility with detour, for esprit in conversation, and in general for any otium, or any otium cum dignitate, I might say." He bemoans that we are increasingly suspicious of all joy. Now, as much as the eclectic, multidimensional individual is a threat to the powers that be, so is the idler as someone who looks for meaning, and to be idle means to be suspended. The suspiciousness of joy is something that some of us may have experienced. But how we can be joyful in a world such as ours is for another day to discuss. But I suggest that we make all the greatest efforts that we can to create spaces for and of otium, for and of this idleness with dignity, where we reclaim the word idleness to mean something rather beautiful and active. That is to say that we create also spaces for reflection, gathering, and conversation, for esprit in conversation, and ceremony and joy, where we withdraw from the joyless buskilling of our epoch, of this dull, numb boredom, and the fakeness of the world we live in, and of the outrage we often experience, by not even opposing them, or even arguing with them, but by laughing them off perhaps, or not even that much, but simply by turning away and creating our own spaces. We render certain elements powerless and strengthen ourselves. Nietzsche writes in the second chapter of Beyond Good and Evil, which is entitled Free Spirits, quote, "We free spirits have understood how to preserve our ignorance in order to enjoy an almost ungraspable freedom, harmlessness, serenity, yes, to enjoy life." And this is crucially important for us in an epoch where we can look at anything that apparently happens anywhere at any time, just to say the obvious again. Well, we have frail nerves just because of that. Ignorance might be bliss. And Nietzsche adds something crucial in Twilight of the Idols, which you know also from the Idleness with Dignity lecture on Nietzsche. Nietzsche says here, "To learn how to see, that is, to grant the eye tranquility, patience, not to immediately react to any stimulus, but to act upon one's highest instincts. To learn to see is what we can call the strong will. To react to everything immediately is a symptom of exhaustion. To be open to everything at any time is bad taste." Now, let's build such places and spaces where we don't just react to any kind of outside stimuli, but where we turn inwards. It's quite important to notice that this isn't some sort of a bourgeois withdrawal into the private or anything like that. No, for Nietzsche precisely to not see and not just react to any stimuli, but to live on a different historical plane is equivalent to escaping slave morality and becoming masters of our own fate, taking control, rather than to reacting to stimuli from without. To escape slave morality and to escape the herd means to become masters of one's own fate. That has to do with amor fati, that has to do a lot with the eternal recurrence of the like. And in The Gay Science, Nietzsche writes also the following: "Signs of nobility, never to think of lowering our duties to the rank of duties for everybody, to be unwilling to renounce or to share our responsibilities, to count our prerogatives and the exercise of them among our duties." So there's a sense of nobility that comes with it. I wanted to end briefly on Novalis, a German poet, who in Blütenstaub says something about those who are orderly. It makes a distinction between die Verworrenen und der Verworrene and der Geordnete. Der Verworrene, he says, which is the confused or the discombobulated, the perplexed ones, they're very often confused to be idiots, Dummköpfe, fools. And the orderly, the well-ordered minds, they're usually considered the more appropriate. But they are encyclopedians, he says. And they get to a certain stage, but they will never reach true genius. And that has much to do with the eclectic, and much to do with also what we mean when we have these eclectic, wide-ranging conversations. Der Verworrene, for so the confused, the discombobulated, the perplexed one, for Novalis, is someone who has, that's a sign of an abundance of power, of an abundance of strength and forces, but there's just not yet a directedness. They lack orientation and direction. So, but once someone who's considered confused is able to channel their energies, their forces, and their power towards one unified or one all-unifying goal, that's when they become more or less unstoppable and are an exuberance of themselves and are a true genius, a true eclectically involved with the world. Thank you very much for listening. As I said, feel free to subscribe to the channel and support me on Patreon. Thanks very much.